All right, so uh, it looks like you've been digging into embedded Linux
Yeah.
and the Yocto project. This stuff can get pretty dense, but hopefully this deep dive will give you some of those key takeaways. We're
Absolutely.
going to be pulling from a couple of sources here.
Okay.
Mastering Embedded Linux Programming by Frank Vasquez and Chris Simmons, and Embedded Linux Development using Yocto Project by Ottavia Salvador and Diane Angelini.
Sounds good.
So jumping right into it,
Sure.
embedded Linux is a bit of a beast.
It can be, yeah. It's like a big puzzle.
You've got toolchains and bootloaders and kernels and file systems.
Right. All these pieces have to come together just right.
And that's where Yocto comes in, right?
Yeah, that's where Yocto steps in as our build system.
So instead of doing all that manually piecing together,
Right, exactly.
Yocto is like our orchestrator.
It's the conductor of the orchestra.
I like that.
Yeah.
So how does it do that, though?
Well,
What is the magic behind Yocto?
the magic.
We keep hearing these terms bit-bake recipes and layers.
Right.
What are those?
We'll think of a bit-bake recipe as a blueprint for a specific software component.
Okay.
It tells Yocto everything it needs, where to get the source code, how to configure it, what other components it depends on,
Interesting.
and then how to package it all up.
So it's not just like throwing a bunch of code together?
No, it's very structured,
It's recipe-driven.
very recipe-driven.
Okay, and then these recipes are organized into...
Layers.
Each layer is like a collection of recipes
Yeah.
that provide a specific kind of functionality.
But for example,
So you might have one layer for your core system utilities, another layer for networking,
okay,
and then maybe a third layer for the drivers for your specific hardware.
so you can kind of pick and choose. That's
Exactly.
what you need.
Yeah, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Almost like Legos.
Yeah, it's very much like Legos in that way.
I like that. And because of that, Yocto has become pretty popular.
Oh, yeah.
Other build systems like Buildroot have adopted it.
Yeah.
Right. And even some mainstream Linux distributions are taking inspiration from the way Yocto does things.
Yeah, if it's a good system, it's a good system.
Exactly.
So how do we actually get started with this?
Okay, so
How do we build something with Yocto?
first you need to set up your development environment.
Okay.
And for that, you need the Pokey repository.
Pokey.
Yeah, that's kind of like your starter kit for any Yocto build.
So Pokey is like our base camp.
Basecamp, yeah.
And once we have that...
Once you've got Pokey set up, then you can start using the magic command,
Ooh.
which is bitbake.
Big bake. Okay.
Yeah, this is the command line tool that reads all those bitbake recipes and
Yeah.
orchestrates the whole build process.
So it's going and fetching source code,
It fetches source code,
compiling it,
compiles it
and then packages it all into
into the images that you're going to flash onto your device.
the images.
Yep,
Now, are there different types of images we can create?
absolutely. You could build something really small, like core image minimal. That's like the bare minimum system you need.
If you're just testing things out.
Yeah, maybe you're just testing, or you have a really resource-constrained device.
Yeah, okay.
Or you could go for something bigger, like core image full SAPND line.
What does that give you?
That's a lot more feature-rich.
Okay.
It's getting close to like a desktop environment.
Interesting.
So it really depends what you're trying to do.
So we can tailor to our needs.
Yeah, exactly.
What's happening behind the scenes when we run BitBake, though?
Behind the scenes,
What's going on?
a bit of magic, but I can show you a little behind the curtain.
Okay.
What bitbake does is it creates this temporary build directory.
Okay.
You can think of it as Yocto's workshop.
A little workshop?
It fetches all the source code there,
Uh-huh.
compiles everything according to the recipes,
And then puts it all together.
and then packages it all up into those final images.
So there's this whole hidden workshop.
Yeah, it's a hidden workshop.
Can we influence what goes on there?
You can, and the way you do that is with a file called conflocal.com.
Conflocal.conf.
Yeah.
What is that?
Think of that as the control panel
Yeah.
for your whole Yocto build. You can change settings, define variables, and really fine-tune how the whole process works.
Sounds powerful.
It is.
So conflocal.conf is where we put on our customization hat.
Exactly where you put on your customization hat.
So these BitBake recipes,
Yeah,
they're pretty important.
they are. They're the heart of the system.
But how much control do they actually give us?
More than you might think. Remember, each recipe is like a blueprint.
Right.
It tells Yocto not just where to get the source code, but how to configure it too.
So we can actually like pick and choose
Yeah.
different features within a package?
Absolutely. You can set compiler flags.
Okay.
You can define, include paths. You can even apply custom patches
Interesting.
if you need to.
So we can really optimize each piece of software
Yeah, you have a lot of control.
for our specific hardware. That's great. And then,
And beyond just configuring individual packages,
okay.
the recipes also handle the dependencies between them.
The dependencies.
Right. So say you want to include a web server in your image.
Okay.
The recipe for that web server will list out all the libraries and other packages that it needs.
It needs to actually run.
Exactly. And Bitbake will automatically make sure
Okay.
that those dependencies are met during the build.
So it's not just like grabbing that one thing.
No, it's grabbing the whole tree.
Grabbing the whole tree. I like that.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about forgetting something.
Especially for complex projects.
Especially for complex projects can be a real lifesaver.
Definitely. And now these layers.
Yeah, the layer.
We talked about the Lego bricks.
The Lego bricks.
How do they actually work in practice?
Okay, so let's imagine you're building a smart home device.
Right.
And you need Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on this thing.
Sure, makes sense.
You might start with a base layer that provides core system functionality. Then you add a networking layer on top of that.
Okay.
That has the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth drivers and all the tools you need.
So we're layering on.
Layering it on.
In the connectivity stuff.
And since it's a smart home device,
right,
you'll probably want to layer for home automation protocols too.
Like Zigbee or something?
Yeah, like Zigbee or G-Wave.
So you're building up the functionality step by step.
It's modular.
And then on top of that.
And then to top it all off, you might have a custom layer.
Okay.
That has recipes specific to your device's hardware. Like maybe a driver for a special sensor you're using.
Right. Or a specific type of display.
Exactly. That's where you get the real customizability.
It's like you're building your own little toolbox.
It is. It's like a custom toolbox.
For this device.
Yeah.
You only include the tools you need.
That's a good analogy. But real-world development, it's not always that clean.
It can get messy.
What if we need to add a new feature?
Okay.
Or fix a bug?
Do we have to start from scratch with Yocto?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
This is where Yocto's flexibility really shines.
Okay.
So if you need to add a new feature, you just create a new recipe for the package that provides that feature.
Right.
And then include it in your custom layer.
And if we need to modify an existing recipe.
If you need to modify an existing recipe, say to fix a bug or tweak a configuration, there's a tool for that. It's called DevTool.
DevTool.
Yeah.
What does that do?
DevTool lets you make changes to recipes in a safe environment.
In a safe environment.
You're not actually changing the original Yocto source files.
So it's like a sandbox.
It is like a sandbox.
Play around.
You can experiment, make changes.
Make sure it works.
Test it out.
And
then once you're happy with it,
merge it back in.
You merge it back into your main Yocto build.
That's a lot safer.
Much safer.
Than just going in and hacking away at the source code.
Definitely. And another really cool thing about Yocto is that it can manage dependencies and updates.
Even after?
Even after you've deployed your devices.
Wait, so we can update devices that are already out in the field?
You can. That's right.
How does that work?
Yocto provides tools and mechanisms for managing software updates remotely.
Oh, wow.
So you can set up a package management system that lets you install new packages or updates on your devices, wherever they are.
It's like having an app store.
Yeah, kind of like an app store for your embedded Linux devices.
I like that.
You have control over which updates are available.
Okay.
You can manage versioning.
You can roll back.
You can even roll back to previous versions if you need to.
If something goes wrong.
Exactly. This kind of control is really important.
Yeah, for long-term...
For long-term stability.
Stability.
Yeah.
It seems like Yocto has thought of everything.
It really has. I mean, it covers pretty much every stage of the embedded Linux lifecycle.
But this whole workflow, it still feels kind of mysterious to me.
It can be a bit of a black box at first.
Yeah, like all this metadata, the build tasks, the images.
So let's try and break it down.
Yeah.
At its core, Yocto follows a pretty clear build process.
Okay.
It starts by parsing all the metadata.
The metadata.
Which includes the recipes,
the
layer configurations, any custom settings you've defined in your local.conf.
So it's gathering...
It gathers all the instructions first.
All the instructions.
Then it moves on to the actual build tasks.
Okay.
Like fetching the source code, configuring it according to the recipes, compiling it, running any necessary tests.
The heavy lifting.
That's the heavy lifting, yeah.
Okay.
And then finally, it packages everything up into those images that you can then flash onto your device.
So it's like a 3-act play.
It is like a 3-act play.
Gather the script.
Do
all the actions.
Perform the actions.
And then the final product.
And then deliver the final product.
A very complex.
Very complex.
Highly automated production.
Highly automated, yeah.
Now, earlier we talked briefly about remote debugging.
Yeah.
This is especially useful for devices that are maybe hard to reach.
Right, if your device is out in the field somewhere and it's acting up,
Yeah.
You don't want to have to go and physically retrieve it
Okay.
to debug it.
So how does this remote debugging work?
Yeah.
So how does this remote debugging magic actually happen?
Well, you can use tools like GDBobserver on the device itself and GDB on your host computer.
Okay.
They communicate over the network.
Oh,
so you can debug the device's software remotely.
So even if the device is like miles away,
exactly,
we can still see what's happening.
Yeah, you can set breakpoints, step through code line by line, inspect variables, all the things you do with a local debugger, but from anywhere.
Wow, that's incredibly useful.
Yeah, especially for those really tricky bugs that only seem to show up in the field.
When the device is actually out there,
exactly,
it really seems like Yocto has thought of everything.
It really has covered all the bases.
And the fact that it's open source?
Yeah, that's huge.
That's incredible.
There's a whole community of developers constantly working on it.
So it's only getting better?
It's always getting better, yeah.
Are there any other advanced Yocto features?
Oh, tons.
That we haven't even touched on?
Yeah, there's advanced package management, where you have even finer control over which packages are included in your image. You can even create your own custom distributions within Yocto.
Oh, wow.
Tailored specifically to your needs.
So we're not just building images.
No, you can become a distro creator.
We're distro creators.
Yeah, with Yocto.
It's amazing.
And
remember those temporary build directories we talked about? Understanding how Bitbake uses those can be really helpful for troubleshooting build issues or for customizing the build process even further. So it's worth looking under the hood.
Yeah, it is.
Even though it's complex.
It can be a bit daunting.
Yeah.
But it's really helpful to know what's going on in there.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Of Yocto.
There's so much more to explore.
But it's been so eye-opening.
Glad to hear it.
What would you say is the key takeaway here?
I'd say the key thing to remember about Yocto is its flexibility.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to dive into those recipes and layers. Experiment, see what works for your project.
Find those areas that are relevant.
Exactly. That's when Yocto really clicks.
Yeah, that's when it all comes together.
Yeah, and you realize just how powerful it can be.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for guiding us through this Yocto journey.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
And to our listener.
Yeah.
Keep exploring the world of embedded Linux.
It's a fascinating world.
There's always something new to discover.
Absolutely.
Lappy building.